Trust isn't usually destroyed by a single massive explosion. It's destroyed by 1,000 tiny pinpricks. Behaviors so subtle, you might not even realize you're doing them until the person you love looks at you like a complete stranger. Meet Claire and David. They've been married for 6 years. On paper, they were the anchor couple in their friend group. David was a high school principal, patient, structured, and respected. Claire was a freelance interior designer with an eye for detail and a heart that she wore on her sleeve. For a long time, their marriage felt like a safe harbor, but lately, David had noticed a shift. It wasn't that they were fighting more, it was that the way they communicated had changed. David prided himself on being a protector. He believed that if he didn't tell Claire about the small stresses, the budget cuts at school, the difficult parents, the car making a strange noise, he was saving her from unnecessary worry. In David's mind, he was being a hero. In Claire's mind, he was becoming a ghost. She would catch him mid-thought, his eyes distant. When she asked, "What's on your mind?" he would give the same two-word answer, "Nothing, honey." He thought he was giving her peace. He didn't realize he was actually giving her a reason to wonder what else he was hiding. The first real shadow fell on a rainy Tuesday. David's phone buzzed on the kitchen island while he was in the shower. Claire didn't mean to snoop, but the screen stayed lit long enough for her to see a name she didn't recognize, Elena. The message was brief. "Are we still on for tonight? I need an answer." When David walked into the kitchen, steaming from the shower, Claire mentioned the text. David didn't flinch, he didn't look guilty, he just laughed it off and said, "Oh, just a work thing, don't worry about it." He didn't offer a last name, he didn't explain who Elena was, he just tucked the phone into his pocket and walked away. It was a micro-omission, a tiny behavior David thought was harmless, but for Claire, it was the first brick in a wall of distrust. Why was work so a mystery? Over the next few weeks, David's hidden behaviors began to multiply. He started taking calls in the other room, not because he was cheating, but because he didn't want Claire to hear him arguing with the school board. He started changing his browser tabs when she walked by, not because he was looking at anything inappropriate, but because he was researching a career change he wasn't ready to discuss. But then the vague truth started. When David said he'd be home at 6, he'd show up at 8. When Claire asked where he'd been, he'd say, "Running errands." He felt that as long as he wasn't doing anything wrong, he didn't need to give an itemized report of his life. What happened next was the slow death of Claire's confidence. She began to fill in the blanks David left behind. In the absence of information, the human brain always defaults to the worst-case scenario. If it was just work, why is he whispering? If it's just errands, why is he 2 hours late? Is he bored of me? Is he planning a life without me? Every time David withheld a small detail to save her from stress, he was actually stealing her sense of security. He was practicing passive dishonesty. He thought trust was built by a lack of bad news. He didn't realize trust is actually built by a surplus of transparency. Hope flickered when David planned a surprise weekend getaway. He thought this would fix everything, but because he kept the destination and the details a surprise, Claire's anxiety spiked. She didn't feel pampered, she felt controlled. The explosion didn't happen at home. It happened in the parking lot of a local bistro where David had told Claire to meet him for a quick dinner. As Claire pulled in, David's car showed, and next to it she saw David standing with a woman, the woman from the text, Elena. They weren't kissing, they weren't even touching, but they were deep in conversation. David handed her a thick envelope. Elena took it, nodded, and got into her car. Claire felt the world tilt. She didn't wait. She threw open her car door and marched across the pavement. "Is this the work thing, David? Is this the errand you've been running for a month?" David, stunned, "Claire, wait! It's not what you think. I was trying to protect you." "Claire, protect me from what?" The truth. You've made me feel like I'm crazy for weeks. You've been a stranger in my own house. David opened the envelope he had just received back from Elena. It wasn't love letters, it was a legal settlement. Elena was a lawyer. David had been sued by a former employee at the school, and he had been fighting it in secret for months. He had spent their savings on legal fees, hiding every withdrawal, every meeting, and every fear because he didn't want to burden Claire with his failure. The betrayal wasn't an affair. The betrayal was the fact that he decided she wasn't strong enough to stand by his side. The drive home was the longest of their lives. David finally realized that his protection was actually a form of isolation. By keeping his struggles hidden, he had robbed Claire of the chance to be his partner. They didn't fix it that night. Trust that is eroded by 1,000 small cuts takes 1,000 small repairs to heal. David had to learn the radical transparency hack. No more nothing when she asked what he was thinking, no more work things without context. Claire had to learn to trust again, which was harder. She realized that David's secrecy wasn't a lack of love, but a lack of self-worth. He thought he had to be perfect to be loved. They sold the house to cover the legal costs. They moved into a smaller apartment, and strangely, they had never been happier. The ghost was finally gone, replaced by a man who was flawed, stressed, and completely honest. We often think we're protecting our partners by withholding the messy parts of our lives, but in a marriage, secrecy is a slow-acting poison. Your partner doesn't need a hero who has all the answers. They need a teammate who shares the truth. Distrust isn't always born from what you do, it's born from what you refuse to show. David thought he was protecting his marriage by hiding his struggles, but he almost lost it instead. Would you have stayed after finding out your partner spent your life savings in secret? Or would the passive dishonesty be too much to forgive? Let me know in the comments.